Aloha, my friends and family. Today I have an offering for you entitled Ashes and Ashes, the field grows new life now. Can't you see it's too much rage? Yo, 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 yo. Singing ashes and ashes, the field grows new life now. Ashes and ashes, the field grows new life now. In the modern human condition, we associate ashes, of course, with destruction. When things burn down, you got ashes. The end results of a raging wildfire, for example, everything is turned into ashes. As it is in many situations, the majority of modern humans often only see half the picture. For since antiquity, humankind has known ashes often make the best soil amendments or nutrients, as well as the agents of nature that have done the necessary final prep work for getting the garden ready for the next year, clearing the weeds, debris, and extra plant and animal life that can degrade or overwhelm the crops. Maybe that's how they can convince so many citizens of California who are already compliant with the SDC that those fires were all natural, and so or mostly. And so in classical alchemical thought, this would be basically a final part of the first phase of alchemy, alchemical transformation, called nigredo, or the blackening or purification process, or burning away of the obstacles, or in the case of psychological shadow work, your ignorance, or in this case, any bad feng shui of the field. Okay, so whether it's your living exterior 3D environment, or your, as well as your psychological, mental fourth and fifth and up dimensional body, your emotional body, it's any kind of bad feng shui happening in your subconscious is, of course, going to need to be burned out or sold or transformed. So this awareness was, of course, weaponized against the public. They want you to identify, they want you to think your problems and your Archontic influence are who you are. The Library of Alexandria was burned to the ground by the rapidly growing possessed dark controllers of that era, as I would call them. And it was a library that had been built to assimilate and compile all of the massive amount of spiritual wisdom and secret wisdom teachings on planet Earth. And, the portion of Elena Danon's thing that I think is not insanity, that I agree with, that in the future this planet, or this divine sphere, Mother Gaia, will be considered a grand, amazing, free multiversity, where beings from all over the multiverse, many galaxies and universes, come to learn about all kinds of things. And so the Library of Alexandria was really a sort of precursor, or a spiritual parent to the future of this globe. Even, it's sort of like when they assassinated JFK, Martin Luther King Jr., Bob Marley. It's, again, the reason why they don't do that anymore is because they don't want to emblemize the people that share the oneness. And the Library of Alexandria was an example of an institution that was, I would say that it's interestingly enough, our United States library system, since it was started by Benjamin Franklin with perhaps the intention of equanimity of information. In those days, the information would come from newspapers and books, and the vast bulk of it from books that poor folks couldn't afford. So that, perhaps he wanted to empower, all beings. And so, I'm not against socialism, but it depends on the intention. It depends on the mandates and the rules and the ideas behind it, and what's the intention behind it. The United States library system never had any tyrannical intentions. Okay, so it contends with all the bullshit with Luciferian socialism that tries to destroy our liberties and take away our rights and make us, worse slaves than we are. Most of us already are. So the Library of Alexandria was, it was ahead of its time, so it had to be burned to the stake. The Dark Lords could not work their insanity of war conquests and violent, bloody takeovers with fear, guilt, and dogmatic, coercive, ultimatic coercion, i.e., convert to Catholicism or we'll kill you, like what created the California mission system, which led to most of the cities in the coast of California, which is why the New World Order, the 15-minute cities, the implementation of the FEMA camps for the homeless this year to force every single person who's not in the legal box into a FEMA camp this year. Well, you've had hundreds of years of, how many of these landlords are the great-great-great-great-grandson or daughter of conquistadores who, cut off the people's heads. So it's not going to end well because it doesn't have a basis in spiritual or moral or natural moral reality, natural law. It has no basis in natural law. Okay, so later the modern version became take the experimental shot or we'll fire you or you won't be able to go to school. So is the Trump assassination attempt another Hegelian logic based psyop intended to get some of the media to dignify Trump finally after they were forced to by the leftist commie, pilfering and profiteering and bribery to always say how evil he was for years. Trump pushed Operation Warp Speed, yet people in the Trump cult, the Trump Salvationist cult or the Q psyop, both of them, they still think he's their hero and savior. Is this fake assassination attempt, or maybe it was real? Either way, is that a double operation? If it was real, used by Archontic forces in this young man's mind who shot at him to put Trump up on the Jesus cross pedestal, to say he's going to come save our country so that he can win the election and do more totalitarian schematics and agree with more people like Dr. Anthony Fauci to do more things like they wanted to do with more beings like Fauci. You tell me, what do you think? Put a comment. Or perhaps to the Wachowski brothers, after the wild financial and social success of millions of people seeing the Matrix movies, have a sex change operation, or we'll burn you to nothing now. What are the percentages of a chance that the Dark Lords or the people that think of Bill Gates as a puppy dog slave, as a little dog, or just plain slave, said that to them? I think it's a pretty good chance. Or in the case of Lahaina, direct energy weapons machines were used to create laser-based fires to burn down the entire ancient Hawaiian capital city and sacred ritual power spot in order to replace it with create a soulless, anti-life, dark ET controlled 15-minute smart city. Now, is all of what I just said a crazy conspiracy theory, or have you, checked out the Healthy Americans channel, and where they presented all the evidence on YouTube here? They did not care that thousands of children were disappeared, or it was probably the greatest loose harvest, the greatest blood drinking ritual ever on planet Earth, the greatest, most successful vampire, literal, probably blood-drinking fest, or raping, or whatever they wanted, as well as loosh and let's just call it energy harvesting fest of all time. And only how many people, besides me, 2 or 3 other people have said anything to you, the public, about that in the last 11 months since that occurred? No, we won't forget. We don't forget. We don't forget about the crimes against humanity, because we're not going to allow them to happen again. And something I didn't put in my notes here that I was going to say in this video is that after the CZU fire in Santa Cruz County, again, it was UTAT till it's only us, nonviolent resistance. Okay. What was the Henry David Thoreau book called? Civil disobedience. Okay. Civil disobedience. They use Facebook to form citizen watch groups for these arsonists or whatever supposedly naturally created wildfires, orchestrated attempts to burn down hippie towns in the Santa Cruz Mountains, for example. Okay, now there's hundreds of people on Facebook, so that as soon as one person sees one of these damn arsonists or these little wildfires, they're on it. Okay, well, that's an example of UTAT till it's only us. Okay, that's an example of how you overturn the bullshit world of kill the hippies. Okay, so but the government, they provided I don't know how many it was, hundreds of people with a motel room for a few months, like they did in Santa Cruz over in Hawaii, but they did not care that thousands of children were disappeared. Hundreds of locals would be forced into homelessness, FEMA camps, or tent camping along the beaches of Maui. Hundreds lost their income permanently, unless they figure out another way to make money or survive. Lost their livelihoods, because what matters to the anti-life dark side or deep state, I put DS, it means the same thing really, it's control and obedience. You understand? That's what matters to your masters. If you're obedient, if they get to control you, that's what matters. In 2020, during the CZU fires, Alex Jones pointed out that insane California politicians, socialists and these weirdo inverted Democrats, and as well as recently I just saw that Oregonians, refused to create firebreak roads, refused to remove the debris. They said they don't want to mess with nature. So that when these crazy arsonist season began, these states were their oyster, proverbial oyster. Okay, if you're an arsonist and you hated an Illuminati or other whatever, organized or not, whether you're just a psychopath or part of the New World Order, and you hated your town and you hated your state and you live in or you visit Oregon or California, they made it easy as pie to burn down large sections. So it was basically the organized arsonist playground. You made these states their oyster with all that dead brush. I was lucky, because my camp that I inherited and cleaned up from Brad was nearby the uber valuable UCSC property. They came in the middle of the night at 1 a.m. while at the third night of waking up with ashes covering all my stuff. I was a little bit too scared to sleep. The fire coming toward me. It's kind of trippy. I was pretty high. At 1 a.m, I had all my valuables in my hands. I was about to go camp at the beach. And I hear a bullhorn, because over 10% of the University of California system was homeless, houseless, sleeping in trees and tents and their friends' couch and in their cars, getting parking tickets for sleeping in cars on campus. That's how psychotic the system of university is there. They all were forced to get all their boosters, and over 10% of the University of California sleeping in all kinds of places. So they came with a bullhorn right when I had all my stuff in my hands, and they said, "We're evacuating this area. If anyone's sleeping back here, you got to leave." So I'm walking out across this field, and I see this ranger. They did create a firebreak there, road around my campsite. Actually, they saved my tent. It was actually when I was still in a wigwam teepee. They saved my teepee because this fireman got a big tractor and built a firebreak road across the field there. at the last minute while the fire was already raging in August 2020. Several months later, I was sunbathing in the hidden field actually close to my birthday, I reckon, 2020 there. I was sunbathing near my Santa Cruz campsite, and I had the odd experience of several firemen in full fire gear approaching me to say, and this is what they said: "Sir, you have to leave because we're going to burn down this field." That was a pretty strange feeling, because I was laying there naked, and these firemen in full fire gear just kind of politely told me to leave because they're going to burn down the field. There I was, lying naked in the field, sunbathing, now ordered to leave. It was quite surreal, yet I was glad for the obvious. After years of escalating fire season catastrophes, and not just because of stuff like Alex Jones talking about how idiotic the government was, although that probably pressurized it somewhat. The California fire systems finally admitted that the ancient indigenous, interestingly enough, they, like the serpent eating its own tail, the Ouroboros, or the cycle of time, going back to the true wisdom, again, just like Santa Cruz, Berkeley, and the city of Denver decriminalizing psilocybin, they finally admitted the ancient indigenous tradition of controlled burns of fields is a far superior way to deal with this huge issue. Burn down or burn up all of the brush that that causes the fires to grow out of control. Okay, this is what the indigenous Californians knew to do for, since the beginning of what we call timey. And so and they never had these problems of all their villages burning down. So later I noticed how beautifully that field grew back and balanced with nature. That field behind my camp there, in Brad's camp that I stayed for 7 years, that it grew, all the flowers and the bushes and all that grew back really beautifully. I noticed how the controlled burn made it all grow back really beautifully. And that field grew back in balance with nature. Ultimately and eventually, y'all, we know that in our heart of hearts, in our subconscious mind, and our true higher heart, they call it, we must forgive ourselves and others for past mistakes in order to atone or become one now. And as I said earlier in this video, we don't forget the past, because that's the victors of these, especially the New World Order or the Old World Order, all the world orders that were from the inverted controller of the dark ETs, they erased the history. Again, they burned down the Library of Alexandria, and when Rockefeller created the forced U.S. compulsory school system over a century ago, they got to say what the history was, man, So it's a big problem when people don't know any history. So we never forget the crimes against humanity, yet we don't hold a grudge. We atone, we forgive ourselves and others in order to purify the subconscious from the garbage, because that keeps us in a state of war. You understand? You understand? You understand? Okay? Grudges are an impediment to enlightenment. It makes it impossible. Hate, fears, jealousy, resentment, bitterness, regret, and worries must be burned up in the alchemical fires of Gnostic awakening through the recapitulation process. If you want to go that way, the Toltec path of recapitulation, or gnosis discernment on the path of the true Christen, the true Christed original divine reality that Yeshua brought back to the surface here for us, the Master Yeshua. Gnosis discernment and process, you figure out what you were supposed to learn from your trauma. Okay, that's the path of recapitulation, or the true path of wisdom. It's painful, and but it's a powerful alchemical transformation that only you can go through on your own, or you can use a psychologist or a spiritual teacher to help you. I can give you some hints, and others can give you better hints than me. And but it's only you that can turn out. Only you can prevent or get rid of this insane forest fire in your third eye and replace it with that illuminated glow, that burning, passionate kundalini fire of awakened consciousness that you were in full control over. And I was watching Mark Passio videos, and it's interestingly enough, he says I am both an anarchist and a monarchist, and he gets a huge crowd response, at these anarchist festivals for saying he meant, but what he quantifies it by saying what he means is that only one spirit rules the inside of his mind himself. He's a monarchist on the inside of his mind. In other words, he's the king of his mind. But an anarchist in the exterior world, in other words, he doesn't believe in the false, or he also had come up with the idea of spreading around this term. The true word of it is anarchist. And I love this. Of course, as a modern Gnostic teacher, I love this idea. I might make a T-shirt for him that's using his idea, and then send it to him and wear it. Anarchist, an anarchist, and so an anti-archist. No, an anti-arcanist is what I meant to say. Okay, I got it after a few tries. An anti-arcanist is what he said. Because Archontic reality is the false reality I'm helping you to heal here, if you're ready to heal it. And so, in the path of recapitulation or gnosis discernment, you figure out what you were supposed to learn from your trauma, extract a lesson, and burn away the false self, or Archon's dogmas, control trips, lies, and inverted dark side, trauma-bonded fake concepts. As you've burned off most of these major obstacles to your spiritual awakening, they actually become, it's amazing, how alchemy works. They actually become the pure fertilizer or ashes for your soul to flower. The Buddha called our soul, or Gautam Siddhartha, the most popular one, he called our soul essences flowers. He said we were like flowers, And he'd say our consciousness is a lotus growing in the mud and the muck of this 3D world, this divine sphere made of earth and plants and grass and animals, and also the muck of the spiritually hijacked 3D matrix, human slave farm, planet soul recycling Saturn moon matrix memory wipe program, I call it, or my teachers have termed it. Here I am, back at my siblings' house here in the sacred, lovely, beautiful West Ashley, South Carolina, close to the islands of Charleston and in the warm southern city of my birth, several miles from where I was born. It is important to note, I have never said to physically destroy I'm not like a Cathar or an old-fashioned ascetic Gnostic. I've never said to physically destroy the satanic adverse. The word Satan in the Old Testament meant the adversary. So I mean to say also all adversarial forces. You don't fight fire with fire directly, because it's like Revolutionary War when they lined people up with rifles from the both different North and the South or whatever, and they said, all right, now kill each other. It's just ridiculous. So I've never said to physically destroy the satanic adversarial forces that claim to control and legitimately have the right to trick everyone into compliance. No. If the good humans were like the fake controllers who orchestrated the memory wipe and forced reincarnation after every life, we'd never get anywhere else. We'd never evolve. If we had to fight fire with fire, if we have to be violent, if we have to be coercive, manipulative, raise our voice, yell, kill each other, break each other's bones, we'd never get anywhere. We'd never evolve. Just like the forced memory wipes with with all the physical destruction. The idea that the prison planet is a school would never be believable at all. As in the forced human amnesiac reincarnation matrix system, you know, if there wasn't if benevolence and good wasn't a part of it, if they didn't have to, you know, it's obvious they have to pretend to give you free will, and as much as possible they have to give you fake informed consent before they give you the experiment, or any other kind of slavery experiments. They have to give you fake informed, like with ritual, like with child trafficking or work trafficking. They have to promise a person, you know, give them a fake deal before they make them a slave, right? It's always the same. So freedom is actually the law, and because all the hundreds of thousands of black magicians that control most people's minds on planet Earth know that, that's why they have to hide, and that's why they have to run mind control, such advanced mind control schematics. And it also, you know, unfortunately, the fact that they do electrocute or use some kind of weapon to destroy your memories, it just makes it unbelievable if you have a lot of discernment, to say that this earth is a school. Okay? When people have told me dozens of times, oh, you have a really old soul. If I have a really old soul, then why can't I remember any of the lessons from any of those lifetimes, huh? There's a real important reason. Well, you know, why don't I have a girlfriend right now? There's a real important reason. Well, I've done the 100% of the shadow work to prevent me from being ready in my, you know, or just allowing myself for that experience. But again, sexual misery programming is one of the most, you know, powerful. And then when it comes to the point of having multiple physical illnesses, and some of them chronically, you know, completely contagious, it's like, wow, man, you know, all those things were actually, some of them were weapons, you know, and whether they were, you know, inadvertent or not. You know, the results of overuse of antibiotics for one factor, and again, just to teach me the lesson to not be promiscuous, to not be, you know, at one point 10, 15 years ago, you know, when I would think that the physical animal, the sexual impulse was my identity, I identified with sex. And then again, this is how they, you know, they come up with all these identities and get these, you know, the youth to take hormone blockers or cut off, you know, go to surgical castration and actually believe that they want surgical castration because they have gender dysmorphia, they're in the wrong body. And to actually popularize this idea, to actually have hundreds of surgeons in California, for example, who were happy and titillated, willing and able to help this person get into the right body that, you know, again, as I've said, my be truth, just from the book, The Divisions of Lame Deer, is that around 3% of humanity is naturally into cross-dressing and homosexual, but that doesn't mean they're born into the wrong body. Okay, so, but they're gonna, you know, this whole system is, you know, again, it's very overtly. I mean, look at the figure of Baphomet is very overt what this archetype actually is. Okay, so, but if we're all amnesiacs and we can't remember our past lives, we can't remember the wars that happened 100, 200 years ago, or what happened when they burned down all these cities in the 1800s to do the New World Order back then, the first industrial revolution, you know. We can't remember any of this stuff because Rockefeller controls the public school system, you see. So this is all public knowledge now that, you know, and so this is why YouTube, like it or not, CIA guys, you are part of the real reclamation of this, what was lost, some of the information and material that was lost in the Library of Alexandria, the real truth, the exopolitical human condition of, you know, slavery and the freedom, the original and future possibility of freedom, the original and future possibility of the truth, of clarity, discernment, the divine right of humanity given to us by the natural law of this planet, which is the law of the land, which is free will, codified into law by the so-called founding fathers of the United States with words they gleaned from the Iroquois chiefs who had managed to create perfect peace in the Iroquois nations for 200 years using the concept of the president. We are not tasked with reinventing the wheel. Okay. So basically, the amnesiac reincarnation matrix system is not a school because you are not allowed to learn the truth. If we burn down the internet, if we allow or if the dark side or whoever, if the internet is dominated more than 50%, again, the aggregate by the dark side, the deep state, the Illuminati, the destroyer angels, and they just decide to delete it all, we are no different than those who burned down or allowed the burning down of the Library of Alexandria, okay? And that's a strong possibility if we don't get those numbers up to over half the people to working in those groups, like Zach Voorhees and other whistleblowers and other people on the side of truth in all sectors of the tech realms, the corporate tech realms, man. We've got to have that balance. I mean, we've got Peter Thiel and Donald Trump Jr. and Donald Trump are probably the three biggest funders of Rumble. So all you people who think Rumble is a freedom platform, that's true to some extent. But don't say anything against those three guys because they're the ones who are funding your freedom platform. Okay? And it's not kosher. We are not tasked with reinventing the wheel, okay? Creating new systems of external power. We've got access just from the internet. It's amazing. The age of Aquarius, the Wi-Fi, Tesla's amazing invention. We have access to all these ancient systems of harmonious, respectful, alchemical, organic process like permaculture, for example. If we learn permaculture, we don't need their filthy Bill Gates farms. We can do permaculture, okay? We can... no, we don't have to, some of you might have to still keep paying your property tax, your mortgage, and your rent for years more. And I'm not saying to quit your job. I'm saying to make sure that you figure out, you're not hurting anyone with your job, and ideally that your job helps other people, okay? The strongest of us, we can still live in boxes, pay mortgages, taxes, rents. And then some of us will realize that, we're going to have to learn how to fish, hunt, garden, forage, cut the heads off a chicken, steal their eggs, buy or sell, figure out how to use digital currency, or silver as a currency, or coffee. Someone told me the other day coffee is a currency, and figure out some way economically, some way socially, in some way in some type of community, whether it's these silly YouTube communities or even other online communities that go deeper, learn how to trade, learn how to share information to survive the earthly 3D life while we awaken. I might have to sell t-shirts, I might have to turn all this into other forms of media to make money. However, it is in the realms of mind or gnosis that we must burn down the false Archontic mind control matrix. If the property tax or rent is so high, if you live in a state like California or a place like New York City or Seattle where the rent is so high, that you're a slave for that box and you're working 3 jobs, you make shit tons of money and it all goes into the rent, a slave for that lot is all you will become, because you may need and you may need to move to a different state or a different county to get the hell out of that, financial slavery, Unfortunately, the town I'm in here, they're trying to push that in because it's a really sexy, desirable place. But then there's other people, once in a while you find people, and you find foreclosed homes, or you find someone who will give you a good deal, because they're not all like that. So if all of the work I've done on these videos is hidden by censors or ineffectual work because I have not done enough requisite shadow work, I might have to repackage, change, alter, or amplify it, just like I just said, to be perceived in a capitalistic 3D world as true work. I'm not saying it is definitely necessary to change your outer circumstances, though it often is definitely necessary, often, but not necessarily. I'm saying we all must burn down the sick mentations of the anti-life archons or watikos in our minds, constantly telling us to be triangulating, drama tripping, controlling others against their will, fighting, being distracted. Oh, they love to distract you, man. That's why I've said they love cannabis, because if you are a stoner or you use cannabis and you get distracted, wow, that makes them happy. And you know, but they love it if you're generally self-possessed and spiritually retarded, as they attempt to demand these stupid behaviors more and more from everyone possible who's not willing to become awakened, you know. So burn down your obedience and obedience to the false you, little you, the fake ass voice that tells you to control other people or kill yourself. The voice of Lucifer. Not every relationship in your outer life. You don't have to burn down your relationship to your job or your housemate, or your mom, or your kid, or your sibling, or whatever, or your who you work with. You have to burn down those voices within you. You have to burn down the sheep, massively voluminous and sickened killer military voices of the demiurge and your subconscious, so that the junk DNA becomes a powerful, large, cleared, fertile field of growing divine perception of pure Christ gnosis, your real mind. A few years back, I was visiting the Creekside Dispensary in Boulder Creek, California, and I decided to go to do my laundry in the adjacent laundromat. It's in the same little building as the dispensary there. Soon, a very kind man with the Santa Cruz Mountain giant Nephilim genetics introduced himself to me, a benevolent ruler. In other words, he's a man. Now, I never saw this here in South Carolina, where I grew up here around here. But in the state of California, in the mountains of California, you still have some people who have, even the publisher of Laura Eisenhower's book, Awakening the Truth Frequency, Brad, has some of these genetics. He's like 7'5" or whatever. So there must be, some giant or Anunnaki or Nephilim genetics heavily in these people. Now, some of them do have the very self-possessed. They're seemingly evil or dark. They never say anything. But interestingly enough, there's the red-headed evil and the red-headed good. My friend Patrick used to own a dispensary in Ben Lomond, and he has these genetics. He's almost 8 foot tall, and he's very good-natured. And this is another one on the benevolent of the benevolent, the benevolent ET giant race. And if you don't believe this exists, look up the movie The Princess Bride. The movie star and wrestler Andre the Giant was probably the only one from our lifetime that was famous. So yeah, it's known to exist, but the giants race still exists, but it's just there's not very many of them. So anyways, I was doing my laundry, and this guy comes in there, and his name's Herman, and and he's like 8 foot tall. And when I mentioned that I'd got something from the dispensary, or he noticed that I had, he asked me, "Oh, you need some weed?" And I said, I told him I'm broke. And he said, "It's all right. I like to grow. I like to give it out. It costs me nothing to grow." And of course, I'd helped some friends grow cannabis before, and I thought about how expensive the organic nutrients were and everything, and how they'd have to spend hundreds of dollars on the soil, etc., unless they were really a master wizard, and etc. And so Herman gave me a nice sack of ganja, probably an eighth or so, and stating that all he used to grow it was ashes. It is Sensimilia. I don't think there was any seeds in it yet. Yet it was only as potent as some seedy, some old-fashioned, really seedy weed would have been long ago. Perhaps if you pressed it into rosin, you'd get a buzz, but otherwise, you'd have to smoke like 4 grams to get a buzz, but it was still cool. Nonetheless, I was impressed, So Excuse me. So he grew cannabis. He grows cannabis for maybe still with nothing but water. And so I ran into him again a while later, and he gave me a big 1/4 of an ounce size bud of cannabis, Sensibilia cannabis, with crystals on it, as big as my fist. And he handed me a 1/4 ounce size huge bud, and I said, "You really use nothing?" This is probably about 10, 15 years ago now in Boulder Creek. And I was like, "You really use nothing to grow this?" At that point, he admitted he did use something to grow it besides water. He said he used the ashes from an oak tree fire, oak ashes. Kind of blew my mind. I was blown away. This huge bud, he gave me this huge bud, and it had been grown with nothing but nutrient and rich ashes. Of course, like I say, it wasn't very strong at all, but it was still, and just the principle of it, I just thought was cool, and it made me really see empirically why it's called weed, you know. Well, similarly, although your mind might not become powerful and concentrated as a result, you can grow a healthy lotus in your mind. You can become a divine being in your mind and your whole life if you have the courage and discernment and discipline. You can grow a healthy lotus in your mind, even if it is not technically powerful. Just like this guy Herman would maybe still grows weed with nothing but ash and water. It doesn't actually take anything almost. I mean, very, very few resources for you to clear your mind. And what I'm saying is that it doesn't mean you're going to become all of a sudden super powerful. It just means that you will be able to grow. You will be able to live and be pure. You know, if you process these videos and get through the spiritual first or second grade skills I've taught you here, you won't ever be the archons won't ever be able to ruin your life again in the same way they did before. You see, because you won't have the garbage that messing up your feng shui. You won't have the obstacles to prevent your enlightenment, okay, from being the reality, the thing that ties you to the real. So even if it is not technically powerful, your mind can be grown to be powerfully pure just by doing the shadow work to burn down the field or archontic little me tyrant or victimization based lies. Your mental lotus, your third eye, Sensibilia like openness can be cultivated even here and now. You can grow into your real self as you burn down the field of dead brush we call deception, lies, and dogma. Just like any parasites living in my back are going to be all this 100-degree July Carolina sun is going to make sure that they don't have any way to remain on my skin at all. It's the same thing. It's like I say, sunbathing is like the Greek myth of Icarus. You know, for me it would be between 3 to 3. My birthday is December 15th. Between 30 minutes and 3 hours, it's beneficial. Less than 30 minutes, it doesn't do much. Over 3 hours, it could cause cancer or harm me, burn me. So, you know, it's a balance. So just like that, man. You're just like my back right now. Your mind will become completely clear of deception if you do the work. You know, and as you burn down the field of dead brush we call deception, lies, and dogma, it's your field. You must do the prep work, then feed it water, then those ashes, and watch your soil blossom into this cannabis. Whether you have the physical or spiritual resources to make it some rich 30% THC or just simply like Herman does, you know, like just organic weed. Okay, it's up to you. The quality of your moments. Ultimately, when you become an awakened person, the quality of your moments, or most of them at least, all of them, it's up to you. You can't play the victimization, blame game. And, you know, in the end, in the recapitulation of path of the Toltecs, or the path of Gnosis, the Mahayana of Buddhism, there's many different terms for, as my friend Gina said, when you get into the real yogis and the real shamans, it's all the same. Just like the Council of Nicaea organized the lockdowns. I mean, the Council on Foreign Relations did such a masterful job of organizing the lockdowns and all the mandates. You know, the truth is the truth, and it doesn't require any organization, but only the truly enlightened ones can tell you. Only the people who've studied, you know, an eighth or a tenth as much research as I have are going to be able to give you very much help. I mean, those who haven't really done any research, then they can't really help you. So, but if this has helped you, if you haven't already, you know, subscribe, follow me on Odyssey or Rumble if you want to go deeper into the dark secrets of how to heal yourself from the Decepticons' fake reality. And once again, my family, I hope you're enjoying your summer. And if you have the courage to get real with your duty as a ray of the divine Christ light, Sophia, create a great one. Loving you.